Are you a female entrepreneur who is looking for that secret recipe? You know, the one that others seem to have that you want to have to make it all easy or thrive a little bit better? That sounds familiar. You're in the right episode. My name is Leslie Urbis. I'm a registered dietitian and a personal trainer who is wholly embracing herself now and teaching others how to do the same. And today, live with me here is Prima Jope, and we are going to talk about just that. So, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Very well, Leslie. Just for the record, I don't have abs. I don't do margarita. So I hope we'll have something to talk about.
We got plenty to talk about. You just totally explained it to the greatest way. I love how you said recipe, right? Because we're all out there as female entrepreneurs. Okay, well, what are they doing? Whatever they're doing, I must need to do because they have the thing that I want, right? And I remember our conversation when I was on your podcast, and you just really dove into it. So, what's going on? I'm a female entrepreneur. I want the magic sauce, like you had mentioned, Tony Robbins' recipe or whoever else that I think has what I have. What's really going on with a woman? Why can't she just pick up that recipe? What's underlying here?
The truth is, there's no recipe. You look at Tony Robbins and he's crushing it, and you look at the other person and they're crushing it, and you look at everybody, they're crushing it. But what you don't see is what is underneath of all of the crushing it. And so you think they're running a funnel, and you think they have said this about their messaging, and you think they're targeting this person, and you think they're solving this problem. The actual truth is they've had maybe 1,000 iterations of things, and they've found what works for them. It's like, I don't know if the person who is listening drinks, but it's like going in the bar and literally getting your own cocktail created by you. And what we see in the world is everyone else after they've made their cocktail and they're drinking it and they're trying to serve it and it looks amazing, but not for us. When we drink it, we feel like, I don't know. And so really the work that needs to be done is you knowing what goes in your cocktail, and slowly but slowly, it may take you a while, but slowly getting that cocktail to your ultimate taste, the one that is your cocktail. And when you start showing up and enjoying your cocktail, everyone is going to say, oh my God, what is in that cocktail? I want it. But when they put it in their mouth, they're like, oh my God, my taste buds don't really like this. It's really the same. It's the same.
I love it. And I love how you phrase it that way because you love the fact that it's called margaritas and abs. You know, it's just my way of saying you can have both, right? It sounds ridiculous. Margaritas and abs, how does that work? You know, but that's the truth. We raised, with you have to choose between this or that, and raised that somebody else has the way, because we go to school and we're taught that the teacher knows or the priest knows or the clergy knows or whoever, right? Somebody knows. And it's interesting because I have two children and I read these cards. They're called connected kid cards every day, which one of them says, and we read today, you're teaching me just as much as I'm teaching you. And my children were like, what? And I was like, no, seriously, every single day, you guys teach me something I didn't know about myself, right? Which is a true factor. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, that's the thing. And I love how you're saying that it comes to your own cocktail, right? You have to put that together. And I know that just through our podcast episode, we had talked about that. So how do you give them maybe either like some tangible steps or some things that you do or free little tidbits to get them thinking about how to concoct their own little cocktail that's going to work for them?
So the first very thing that I can really say is business is a game of personal growth. You have your traumas, you have your blocks, you have your upbringings, you have your systems, you have your beliefs, you have everything that you've grown up with. Like I was raised and born in Uganda, and mediocrity is really the norm. You go to school, hopefully you turn out well, you get a job, you get married, have kids, hopefully you become a good wife and die. That's it. And there is nothing extraordinary about that. And knowing that that's how I was born and people are starving and people are dying of hunger and there is no money here and the economy is bad and all of those things, my cocktail is definitely different from you who was born in New York City and, TV was a given and you knew you were worth it or you knew people needed what you had to say. I kid you not, when I started, I was struggling to understand how someone from Uganda, a country where people are starving, is going to go in a global stage and say, I have something to share. And so what I really want to say to begin with is it all starts from you and what you have to deal with. My blocks are on another level. We have different kind of things that keep pulling us back. Every time I take a step, something is pulling me back and saying, no one has done this in your entire nation. You can't do it. And I'm go, watch me. Like, watch me. Like, I've really learned to say, watch me. Every time an internal block comes up for me, I'm like, watch me do this. Because I have done that and done that and done that. Now I feel like I can really break the norm, whatever is the norm, whatever my dad's code was. I feel like I can now bust through it and keep moving. And so I wanted to start there because your concoction will be different because of how much personal work has to be done. And whoever told you that you can build a business and put your personal life in the shelf, big, big lie. Every day you show up in your business and your business is looking at you in the mirror. And the further steps you take, the more your stuff shows up. And having the courage to know that this is a personal journey, that nobody will have the same combination of stuff to walk through as you do is like one of the first steps. So the first step that I think, or I believe so far has been very instrumental for my people is client magnetism. And client magnetism is first and foremost working through your stuff. What are those blocks? How do you feel around marketing? How do you feel around sales? How do you feel around your worthiness? How do you feel around people actually wanting your message, needing your message? How do you feel around charging what you're worth? Like all those are things to deal with. How do you feel around money? Getting money, spending money, growing money. What is the work around that? And until we can get to a place of peace with ourselves and where we are, everything else is external. So the first thing is like client magnetism. Have you done the work? After you've done the work, are you very clear? Like, what's the first problem, the number one problem your people have? They have 1,000 problems for sure. They care about one. What is the number one cause of that problem? How are you uniquely positioned to solve that problem? And that is how we're going to create your marketing materials. If you do not know that, and now you start to go on a podcast, don't be surprised if no one is raising their hand, because you've probably missed the number one reason why people need your help. Like I have interviewed hundreds of people and I ask them, what's the number one problem your people have? And every time I get a list and I'm like, okay, but what's the number one thing that people actually are tired of? And they don't know. They're like, all the problems are important. I'm like, how are we going to create marketing materials? How are we going to get people in the door? How are we going to create a customer if we don't really know where like the biggest thing is? And so first thing that I can really say is do the client magnetism work. Deal with your own internal things. It is very interesting how many people will say, I want a new relationship. And you're trying to give them the solution and they can't buy because beneath that, like Leslie, let's say she helps people shed the weight to begin with, challenging the fact that you don't have to limit what you eat to get the weight. You want the abs. You come to Leslie and you're like, Leslie, I want the abs. And she's like, all right, I have these digestive codes and I'm going to help you. And you're inspired. You want to take the thing. And then she tells you how much she charges and you're like, I need to think about it. Okay, duh. What's happening is you want the abs, but maybe subconsciously you're scared of the attention. Maybe the last time you had abs, some guy was hitting on you and you didn't like it. And so you're like, I want the abs. But internally you're like, oh my God, what if men hit on me? And you will not buy because you have this conflict of interest. You want the thing, but you have to think about it. You have to speak about it with your cat, with your spouse. And a lot of people won't move past this to get the person through to the paywall, to the other side of the paywall. And so really the first thing is to understand this kind of resistance, this kind of blocks, what is showing up for you, so you can help somebody else when you feel like they are being held by this stuff. Client magnetism is the first bit of what I like to teach, and it's about dealing with your own personal growth. It's about being really clear what you're here to do. It's about really being very clear what the problem is that you're solving for people. It's about being super clear why they have that problem. It's about being super clear who is the person that is in the market right now praying and crying for that solution. There's a lot of people today who are targeting someone and the person needs to be educated about their problem. Really? There's people crying for the thing you do, but you target somebody else who needs to be convinced and educated that they have a problem. And when you go to market, things don't work because you're speaking to the person who is kind of not interested. And that is the first thing I can say is do your magnetism work, because once you do that, now the other parts become really easy. Now we can create the marketing materials. Once we create the marketing materials, now we can get in front of people because we have something to give them. Once we get in front of people, now we can get leads in and start to have the conversation. But a lot of people are going on a podcast every day and they haven't done the client magnetism work. And when they find someone who's interested, the person beats them out and says, I need to think about it. And they think their way out of the program. And you go to the next person and they need to think about it. And the person goes through the window and we get another person and I have to ask my husband and that person goes through the window. And so what's happening is all those people are going to get stuck with their problem because you didn't really help them. You didn't really help them get over the hurdle of why they are not able to move past whatever the thing they need to think about. What do they need to think about? You're there. You have the answers for them. And what I find is that a lot of people need to heal through that moment. And if you've never done the work, chances are you won't help anybody else. And it will look pushy and it will look salesy and it will look fussy because we're doing it wrong. And so really what I can say is do the work. Because until you do the work, everything else is external, and external doesn't really help. It's like lip service. It doesn't help. Do the work first and foremost. And once you do the work, you open gates to really what is my concoction here. And once you understand what your concoction is, you're able to understand that maybe your system doesn't work for every one of your clients. That maybe every client is going to need some level of twist to the system you have so they can buy or win with your system. And so when you go to sell it to them, they probably understand that there's a space for them with whatever the kinks it is that they have. Long answer, but yeah, feel free to keep asking until I get you to the actual point that you want us to get to.
No, you nailed it. There's nothing else to get to. I think you just totally explained to people why, picking up someone else's recipe isn't going to work. I mean, sure, I can grab any sales script off the shelf, right? Sure, I could go find out, okay, Tony Robbins started with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, blah, blah, blah. He's probably on the second alphabet or third by this point. The guy's been in business for so long, okay? Let's face it that way. We could do that, okay? We could totally go back to the first book he ever wrote. But the truth of it is that it's all due to you, right? And I think what you were really getting at there is that when they come to you, you might be able to help them. But if they're hitting you with something you haven't dealt with, you won't push them to where they need to go. And that's really where you help people with in the very beginning. And I totally understand. I mean, I remember being on our podcast and just having this eye-opening moment. And now coming back to, the bottom line is truthfully, I help women, entrepreneurs who want to lose weight without a diet while they eat food they love. The end. Using my method, right? Using my digestion code method. Straightforward. This is what I do, right? And that comes to both margaritas and abs, right? The abs come through the weight loss without the diet, and the margaritas come because you eat food you love. All right. And it's just kind of a playful, fun thing, right? But the truth is that I would have never gotten here if I didn't go through all of the other things. You have to allow yourself that and allow yourself to make those mistakes with ease. So I think you nailed it. I think you gave people some really interesting things to think about. If you're not, doing this work of figuring out, who you really help, your magnetism work. Is that what you called it?
Magnetism, cloud magnetism.
There you go. Okay. If you're not doing that, you need to reach out to Prima, obviously. I'm going to ask her where we can find her besides on her awesome podcast and her amazing thing. But truthfully, like she's nailed it in terms of, if you can be there so clear in the beginning, you got to the other stage of you can influence anyone. And if you're familiar with the book, The Go-Giver, the third rule of the go-giver of creating massive wealth for yourself is influence. If you can't influence yourself and know exactly who you serve from internal, everybody else is going to be just as confused, right? So it's so great. I love that. I love all the aspects you really nailed. But in case somebody's sitting here like, well, I didn't do any of that and I know I need help, where can they find you?
I want to say something about your business before I answer the question, if that's okay. And Leslie is an amazing person, and her business is more about, I want to have it all. I don't want to choose. I don't want to choose between the money and the love. I don't want to choose between the body and the food. I don't want to choose between this and that. Why can't I have it all? Why do I have to fit in a box? And a lot of women have the same abilities that Leslie have, or maybe unique abilities, and they can help a client overhaul their entire life. You see, Leslie here is telling you about abs, but she can change your life. It's about the abs, it's about the relationships, it's about the business, it's about the money, it's about everything. But Leslie will be doing herself a disadvantage if she comes to you and says, I want to fix your whole life. Because the truth is, we are not thinking about our whole life. We're thinking I'm overweight. And we're in that box. And in as much as Leslie knows 1,000 things that we could get right, the best thing she can do for us is first help us with number one step. I can't fit in my clothes. Once I can fit in my clothes, now we can talk about, I don't know, whatever the next phase is, the dream man. But before the dream man, I need to feel better in my own clothes. I need to be able to wear a swimsuit. And so if Leslie continues saying, I want to overhaul your whole life and make you Oprah, we're going to say, Oprah, like, no, Leslie, I can't fit in my clothes. Don't tell me about Oprah. And if she says, come, let's fit in your bikini, then we can start there. And once we're enjoying the margarita and the abs, now there's a confidence and belief that we can do stuff. And maybe she has the next step and the next step and the next step. So Leslie's business is better simplified if she created a customer first, and her door right now is women who want abs. And those women also have dreams, and those women also have businesses, and those women are also human beings. They have relationships, they have everything else. And so Leslie can do herself a favor by creating her customers through the door of weight loss, and then she can open up and give them everything they need. And that is like a perfect example of what I feel is going wrong in the marketplace, because everybody wants us to buy a new house, you know, overhaul your whole life. And some of us don't even believe we deserve another life. And maybe step one is to help us crawl before we run. And if you're thinking, oh my God, I need to hear more, I need to listen to more, I have a community-owned school. It's called Best Kept Secret Tribe. You're more than welcome to join.
I love it. School. I love it. That's fabulous. Maybe I'll hit you up over there for sure. I'm not in there, so I should be. Anyways, go check that out. And she thoroughly nailed it. And 100%, I agree with you. Because if I started with, oh, I can help you with your whole life, people would be like, okay, I'm out, right? Because it's like, oh, you know, that's kind of scary. It really is, and too much. So I love that. Go check her out. This has been my pleasure. I look forward to, you know, seeing you again on social, as I love everything you do. But any final parting words for anybody?
Yes, thank you. I feel like we're all trying to help. We're all doing the right things. The problem is most of us are doing the right things in the wrong order. And doing the right things in the wrong order will keep you running around a ring road and you don't get anywhere. And what I want to share is like a story of my husband. When we first met, he saw me on Facebook. He saw my post. It was a post about my story of like the deepest, most embarrassing moments of my business when I'd like run out of money, had nothing left. I was actually like going around the supermarket and looking for the cheapest toilet paper. That is how bad it was. He saw that and he was like, oh my God, is there someone who is as honest as this on Facebook still? And I was like, this is my wife. And what he did then is he bought one of my programs through another person. I had like a white label program. And so he bought it through a client. and they were working together, and he would come to the monthly calls, which I did for the community. And he kept asking questions. And one day I felt led to give them an offer. And I said, by the way, if you want to work more closely, I have a $6,000 offer, just message me. The guy messages me and he says, I want a $6,000 offer. And I'm like, cool. What questions do you have? And he's like, none. And I'm like, this must be the easiest sell I have made in my life. I send the guy the link, he signs up. And when I onboard him, then he now tells me why he actually joined. He says, I really like you. I know for me, this is it. My parents already know about you, blah, 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 but I want you to take your time. And I look at him and I think this guy's a psychopath. It's like, I really see my wife in you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, this guy is a psychopath. But then he did one thing that made it possible for him to make it to husband. And that was in 2 weeks, or a month or something. He got his belongings, he packed them in a storage somewhere in the UK, and he said, hey, brother, I'm coming to Africa. And I'm like, coming to Africa in under a month? Really? Give me a reason why I should keep listening. And I was like, I'm coming to Africa, but you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I'll just come, I'll take a hotel, and I'll be there as long as you need to feel comfortable about me. And I tell the guy, like, okay, so you're coming to Africa, how long? And he's like, for good. And I'm like, okay. So here I was. This was a guy on my paper. I had like 44 things I wanted in a guy. Matt was every one of those things and more things. And so I was here. This is what I've been praying for. This is the list I've made. I have kept that list for that like 5 years. I have become that list. And this is the guy. And now I'm freaked out of my own skin. Like, no, there has to be something wrong with this guy. And I think I block him for like 5 days. And I finally get to my senses like, what are you doing? And anyway, he shows around, he takes his hotel, as he said, comes home and everyone falls in love with him. And he just takes it one step at a time, one step at a time. And 1 year later, I say yes to being his wife. The reason I'm telling you this story is people want to hire you, people want to buy, people want to change their lives, but one day at a time. Don't be talking about kids on the first date. Don't be talking about overhauling my life when I don't know that you can move the needle in my business. Don't be opening the curtains before I'm ready to enter the house. Take it one step at a time. Sometimes we have to become a customer before we become a client. And what I do feel is the hardest hurdle for people is they want you to move from here to becoming a client. My program is 50 grand a year, so buy it. And I'm like, I don't know. But if you had something that costs 500, I might wrap my hand around that. And that is, you want to help me lose my weight. And after that, now I have the weight off, I have the confidence, I believe I can make things happen. Now we can talk about your mastermind and your retreat and whatever the experience, but take one door at a time. Do the right things in the right order, because doing the right things in the wrong order is really an equivalent of running around a ring road and wondering why you never make it to your destination. Thanks for having me.
I love it. Fabulous. Running around a ring road without ever getting anywhere. Mic drop. All right. For those of you that have watched, please again, like, share, and subscribe. And as always, grab that link below to connect to her personally. Bye for now.